Peace. This is Ross Davis L. This is Journey Coaching with Ross. This is part two of the breakdown of man and his symbols. Ancient myths and modern man. This part is by Dr. Joseph Henderson. The eternal symbols. The ancient history of man is being rediscovered in the symbolic images and myths by philologists and religious historians. The symbols are brought to life by cultural anthropologists. Before the analyst can explore the meaning of symbols with the patient, he must have a wider knowledge of their origins and significance. For analogies between myths and dreams, contents of patients, we respond to certain things because they are fundamentally symbolic. Heroes and hero makers. The myth of the hero is the most common myth in the world. It has dramatic appeal and psychological importance. The universal pattern is a miraculous but humble birth, early proof of superhuman strength, rapid rise to prominence or power, triumphant struggle against evil, its fallibility of pride or hubris, and the fall through betrayal and sacrifice. There is usually a strong teacher figure. These figures are symbolic representations of the whole psyche. Their role suggests the essential function of the heroic myth is the development of the individual's ego consciousness, or the awareness of one's own strengths and weaknesses, in a way that will equip him for life. After passing the first test, we can enter the mature phase of life. The hero myth then loses relevance. The symbolic death becomes the achievement of maturity. The image of the hero evolves in a manner that reflects each stage of the human personality. Dr. Reardon noted 4 cycles in the evolution of the hero myth. The trickster, which corresponds to the earliest and least developed period of life, his physical appetites dominates his behavior and has the mentality of an infant. He lacks purpose outside the primary needs and is cruel and cynical. The hare appears in animal form and has not attained mature human stature. The transformer, which represents an advanced level trickster, becoming a socialized being, correcting his infantile urges. The red horn, an ambiguous person, reached the world of man with training from the tutor figure. The danger to man's happiness and security now comes from man himself. The twin. How long can human beings be successful without falling victims to their own pride or jealousy to the gods? They're said to be 2 sons of the sun and are essentially human and make one person, separated at birth, but they need to be together. In these two, we see the polarity of man's nature: flesh, acquiescence, which lacks initiative, and stump, dynamic and rebellious. If refined, one figure may be an introvert, which power of reflection; the other is an extrovert, the man of action. They are invincible, but eventually sicken from abuse of their power. The theme of sacrifice and death of the hero is necessary to cure hubris or pride, to balance the poles of human nature. The shadow plays a vital role in analytical psychology. The shadow cast by the conscious mind of the individual contains hidden, repressed, and unfavorable aspects of the personality. It also has good qualities and creative impulses. The ego and shadow are linked like thoughts and feelings. The ego and shadow are in conflict in the developing consciousness of the individual. The hero is symbolic with the emerging ego that overcomes the influence of the unconscious mind and saves the mature man from returning to a childish state in a world dominated by his mother. The hero must realize and integrate the shadow before drawing strength from it. The idealism of youth leads to overconfidence. The human ego can be exalted to experience godlike attributes, but at the cost of overreaching and falling to disaster. Youthful ego must run this risk, for if a young person does not strive for higher goals than he can safely reach, he cannot overcome the obstacles between adolescence and maturity. Death leads to a new life. General rule: the need for the hero symbol comes when the ego needs strengthening, when the conscious mind needs assistance in a task it cannot accomplish alone. The anima, the feminine element of the male psyche, aka the eternal feminine. In all cultures, a labyrinth represented the world of the matriarchal consciousness. It can only be traveled by those who are ready for initiation into the collective unconscious. The hero task is to save the anima, and by doing so, helps to change the mother-son relationship to achieve a more adult relation to women and adult society as a whole. The childish ego frees itself from parental expectation. It becomes an individual. If successful, the full hero emerges as strength and tribal identity. The feminine element no longer appears as a dragon, but a woman, and the shadow takes a less menacing form. The archetype of initiation. The hero image is described as symbolic, as the symbolic means the ego separates itself from the archetypes evoked by parental images in early childhood. Jung suggests originally we have a feeling of wholeness, and from the self, the psyche is individualized, ego consciousness emerges as the individual grows. A separation produces severe injury to the original sense of wholeness. It appears the hero myth is the first stage in the differentiation of the psyche. Unless some degree of autonomy is achieved, the individual is unable to relate to his adult environment. The hero myth shows the possibility of liberation, but leaves the problem of maintaining and developing consciousness. A ritual insists upon the rite of death and rebirth that provides the novice with a rite of passage from one stage of life to the next. Every new phase of development throughout an individual's life is accompanied by a repetition of the original conflict between the claims of the self and the ego. At critical periods, the archetype of initiation is activated to provide a meaningful transition that offers something more spiritually satisfying than adolescent rites in a religious sense, aka the mysteries, requiring special manner of worship at time of birth, marriage, and death. Most common example is found in young people is the ordeal or trial of strength. One difference from the hero myth is the novice is called upon to give up willful ambition and all desire and submit to the ordeal without hopes of success and be prepared to die. A woman's sacrifice enables her to be free from personal relations and helps her to be an individual. A man's sacrifice in his independence, he becomes more consciously related to women. Man's knowledge, or logos, encounters woman's relatedness, eros, and their union is represented via symbolic ritual of marriage. One of the oldest initiation rites is a woman's rite. A deeper meaning and symbolic discovery of the feminine components of a man's psyche is like acquiring a real life. Beauty and the Beast. Women share the masculine hero myth because they must develop a reliable ego identity and require education. Except this comes out in their feelings that makes them women and not imitation men. Modern women may repress their feelings because it threatens to stop their equality of friendship and opportunity to compete with men. Repression may work for a time that she maintains an identification with the masculine intellectual goals learned in school. This may cause conflict that forces her to rediscover her womanhood in a painful way. For a man or masculinized woman, life is to be taken by storm as an act of heroic will. But for a woman to feel right, life is to be realized by a process of awakening. Symbolism shows Beauty, a young lady who entered an emotional bond with her father. Her goodness is symbolized by a request for a white rose. But in a twist of fate, she puts herself and her father under a power able to express goodness and cruelty unconsciously. By learning to love the beast, she awakens to the power of human love in its imperfect animal but erotic form, possibly representing awakening to her purpose of relatedness and enabling her to accept her erotic part of her original wish, which she repressed for fear of incest. To leave her father, she had to accept fear to allow herself to live in his presence, till she could get to know the animal man and discover her own response to it as a woman. This way, she redeems herself and her image of the masculine form from repression, allowing her to trust her love as something spiritual and natural in its best sense. In the case of older women, the beast theme may represent a certain woman's initiation. This may occur at any age when the union of spirit and nature is disturbed. Women must be able to embrace the full polarity of her feelings as Beauty had to give up the innocence of trusting her father, who could not give her the white rose of his feelings without arousing the beast. Orpheus and the Son of Man. The ritual and myth exemplified in the religion of Dionysus and his successor Orpheus, they provide an initiation known as the mysteries of an androgynous god man who knows the animal and plant world and is a master of initiation into their secrets. The religious rites implied the need for initiates to come to its lower nature and experience Mother Earth by drinking wine. Orpheus could have been a real man who was martyred and tomb became a shrine, preserved the quality of religion based on agriculture, which is a pattern for fertility gods. Christianity dispelled the mysteries, and the church adopted many pagan rituals. The most meaningful is the Holy Saturday and Easter Sunday, baptismal and lifting of the chalice into the air to prepare for its spiritualization of the wine. Communion is meaningful to Christians and initiates and is a nod to Dionysus, but with a different emphasis, and Orpheus blends the two. When Orpheus sang, everything stopped to hear and was at peace, meaning through divine insight into meaning of natural events, nature's happenings becomes harmoniously ordered from within. This series of initiatory events from the context of religious history is repeated in dreams of modern people. Death is a mystery we must prepare ourselves for in the same spirit we once learned to prepare for life. Symbols of transcendence. Some symbols are meant to arouse and some are to subdue men. A full initiation embraces both. The fundamental goal of initiation is to subdue the trickster like wildness of juvenile nature. Another kind of symbolism relates to periods of transition in a person's life, but they do not seek to integrate with religion, doctrine, or group consciousness, but to point to our need for liberation from any state of being too immature, too fixed, or final. For an adult, a sense of completeness is achieved by union of the conscious and unconscious contents of the mind. From this arises what Jung called the transcendent function of the psyche. What we call symbols of transcendence are the symbols that represent our striving to attain this goal. At the most basic level of this symbolism, we find the trickster theme as a shaman or the like, whose magical practices of initiation makes him a master of initiation. excuse me, like whose magical practices and intuition makes him a master of initiation. He can obtain knowledge of distant events or facts that he consciously does not know by going into a trance-like state. The highest level of this type of initiatory activity we find the Hindu master yogis. A common dream symbol of this lonely is the lonely journey or pilgrimage that becomes a spiritual pilgrimage, which the initiate becomes acquainted with the nature of death. Such is a journey of release, renunciation, and atonement, presided over and fostered by some spirit of companion, of compassion. Spirit is often depicted as feminine. In the first part of life, when we're still attached to the original domus and family structure and societal group, social group, this may be experienced at the moment of initiation at which we learn to take decisive steps into life alone. A later point of life, one may not need to break ties with the symbol of meaningful containment, but we can be discontent which forces all free men to face some new discovery or to live life in a new way. External change is not enough unless there is some inner transcendence of the old values in creating a new pattern of life. A tree or plant represents symbolic growth and development of the psychic life, distinct from instinctual life, commonly symbolized by animals. Creatures figuratively coming from the depths of the collective unconscious bring special messages to the conscious. Other symbols of the depths are rodents, lizards, snakes, and sometimes fish. These intermediate creatures combine underwater activity and bird flights with terrestrial life. Hermes is a trickster in a different role of messenger. His phallus penetrates from the known to the unknown, seeking spiritual messages of deliverance and healing. Originally of Kemet, Hermes was known as Thoth and depicted with the Ibis head for the transcendent principle. It is not easy for us to grasp the significance of symbols from the past that appear in our dreams, nor how these symbols of containment and liberation relate to us. The conflict in our lives is between adventure and discipline, or evil and virtue, or freedom and security. There is a meeting point between containment and liberation. It can be found in the initiation rites. They can make it possible for individuals or groups of people to unite opposing forces in themselves to gain balance in their lives. The rights relates to phases in life of an individual or group, and unless understood and translated into a new way of life, the moment can pass. Initiation is a process that begins with the rite of submission, followed by a period of containment, and then by a further rite of liberation. This way, everyone can reconcile the polarity of their personality. He can be balanced and truly human and a master of himself.